With news of Jim Knowles leaving his post as the defensive coordinator at Ohio State, there's an opening at the reigning national champions. And let's talk about the guy that most people believe is the leader in the clubhouse and top candidate to take over the job. It's Matt Guerrieri. What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. If this is your first time watching the #1 college football show, thank you for joining us. Consider hitting that subscribe button if you like what you hear. And if you're a returning viewer, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to hit that subscribe button. It costs nothing. It's free. Ring the bell if you don't want to miss any of the segments that we upload each and every day here on the show. I want to talk about Matt Guerrieri, and I kind of want to talk about this as it's an ongoing discussion. And you never know when a defensive coordinator is going to get hired or not, especially as there have been some top openings here relatively recently at times when we didn't expect them. Al Golden left Notre Dame to be the new defense coordinator at Cincinnati. And, of course, Jim Knowles goes to Penn State. And what we think is a contract is going to make him the highest paid defensive coordinator in the country, meaning that the reigning national champions have an opening at defense coordinator. I gave a couple of candidates that are outside of Columbus because I'm not always sure you should be promoting the guy from within. But there is something to that thinking. Now, I'm going to use Michigan as an example here because I think it helps. So bear with me, Ohio State fans. You realize that the system that Mike Macdonald brought to Michigan was one that Wink Martindale had taught him. Jesse Minter used the same system. And of course, Wink Martindale shows up Michigan to run that system that he created. In some respects, this is what the Matt Guerrieri hire would do. This is a safeties coach who helped coach Caleb Downs to unanimous All-American and might do the most in keeping that guy on your football team, which I think is the most important part of this. Like, Caleb Downs rates in a way that defense coordinators don't. That said, if he likes the guy that he is playing for, you're much more likely to be able to keep him and build around him. And I had a brief thought, and I don't want to say run-in because it wasn't a run-in. It was a, hey, how are you with Matt Guerrieri when he was hired as defense coordinator at the University of Tulsa right before taking the job at Ohio State. My goodness, did he dodge a bullet going into this year. TU sucked. We were awful. That's my alma mater is the University of Tulsa. I went to OU for my master's program, and I went to Oklahoma State for my PhD program before doing this job. Give you a little bit of background. So living in Tulsa, being from Tulsa, it's a big part of who I am. And anytime that somebody wants to talk about Oklahoma, I got to remind them that you watch a show that's produced in Oklahoma. So perhaps remember you're on my land. That said, Matt Guerrieri seems to fit all the things that you're looking for. He has spent years in this system, and it was the one that he used at Indiana in 2023, and was co-defense coordinator at Duke from 2018 to 2021. And I think the thing that most people have keyed on when they bring up Matt Guerrieri and try to make themselves feel smarter than they are, or look smarter than they are, not feel, is that they were listening when Ryan Day spoke when they were celebrating the national championship on Saturday when he said, and I quote, "One of the brightest minds in college football, and I'm telling you, a star in the making." It's Ryan Day. I want to make sure that I got that right. If you needed a nudge in the direction that he was thinking about going, that's it. Now, I'll be curious to find out just how this goes because there are other folks that like Tim Walton, who's secondary coach. I don't particularly think that that is the best idea, but I say that knowing what Kerry Combs meant to you, right? Kerry Combs tried to take over Jeff Hafley's system as being secondary coach, and in that system, it didn't work out well. You don't want to repeat that mistake. I realize that there are some of y'all that think that Jeff Hafley wants to come back to Ohio State to be defensive coordinator, and no. He's got a really great job with the Green Bay Packers as defensive coordinator. Before that, he was head coach at Boston College. I don't see him returning for a chance to win the national championship when he's made the playoffs, and that team looks like it can make a run next year once again, and what is going to be a revamped NFC North and what was the toughest division in all of football this year. I understand that there's some folks that really think that Jim Leonhard should be out there. Like, that dude is also pass game coordinator at the Denver Broncos, and should there become another opening there, I think he would want to stay. And then there's a couple of more outside-the-box candidates like Gerard Mayo, who is, I think, going to want to stay in the National Football League, and John Haycock, Mike Tressel at Wisconsin. And I mentioned Bryant Haynes and Pete Kwiatkowski. But Matt Guerrieri seems like the guy. The problem that I think you're running into isn't that he doesn't know the scheme. He does. It isn't that he isn't liked by the players. He is. It isn't that he hasn't helped you win a national championship. He has. It's that none of the defenses that he has coached have been top 50 defenses. They haven't performed all that well. Now you're thinking, perhaps if we give this dude Larry Johnson Sr. and we give this guy Tim Walton and we let him call plays and we can raise him in the way that we would like to see our, raise him in the way that we would like to see our defense coordinators operate, you're in a better position. I think there's something to that. I think that in this way, you want a guy that's not going to butt heads with Larry Johnson Sr., who is the best at what he does. You want a guy who understands the system and what its flaws are and is amenable to some changes, but you also want a guy that knows how the thing is made and can deconstruct it if the time comes for it, like they had to deconstruct it in the middle of this season when Ohio State was up against it. They took their first loss to Oregon, 32-31. And then the defense, for the most part, played outstanding football for the next 10 games. It's the offense that let them down against Michigan, and that's where the Michigan win comes from. But they got that right when they just decided to start throwing the football at Jeremiah Smith. I think that there's something to this. I think that wherever there's smoke, there's fire, right? It's about whether or not it's going to rise to the level of we're going to make this guy the guy. These things are always in flux up until somebody says something. And I think that it's rather interesting that we haven't seen the immediate hire, because that's usually what follows when you get this kind of push from your head coach that, when it's essentially a national championship celebration. When you have one guy leave, you are able to put the next guy in, and you're able to stop the news cycle and stop segments like this one because you would have given the news that this is the new guy. Who else are you taking a look at? Who else are you needed to interview? I guess you have time here, right? This is a desirable post. This is a job that a lot of people want. And while there are lots of jokes about head coaches that might leave their current positions to take this job, there's something to that. Chip Kelly did that at UCLA. He left that job to be the offensive coordinator at Ohio State after Bill O'Brien left that job to be the head coach at Boston College. You never can tell, right? I realize that we're also talking in a mode where we're not always sure what the future is going to look like for the sport, let alone what the future is going to look like for a defending national champion that's going to lose a ton, right? They won't be the first team to lose a ton, but this is where you really get to see whether or not you can rebuild this roster to make it look as good as it did last year. It's a tall order. I don't think they can do it, but you are talented enough. You just don't have the experience to show. Offensive line, I think, is going to be better because guys got snaps that probably wouldn't get snaps normally. And, getting guys back on that offensive line is going to help you tremendously with a new quarterback. You're going to be so young at quarterback, you're going to need the defense to pull its weight in a big way from the word go. You got an opener against the University of Texas, and Arch Manning has already shown people that he is ready to go. Ryan Wingo has shown people he is ready to go. They've got battle-tested tailbacks in Quintravion Wisner, and Christian Clark is coming back. Jared Gibson is a load there. They're going to be good. You've seen this Pete Kwiatkowski defense too. It's going to be really great and a lot of fun to watch. So as we get closer to this, I just want to speak on the Matt Guerrieri part of this because I think it is an interesting bit, and I think it is something we got to take into account. So we'll see where this lands, but right now it doesn't feel like a bad idea. Just I'd like to see what happens if you go through with it.